Welcome to the channel Coinexa USA, and before we dive in, let me ask you something that might just change the way you look at your loose change forever, because what if I told you that a coin so small, so ordinary, so completely unremarkable to the untrained eye, has sold for a price that would make your jaw drop straight to the floor? We're talking about a coin you might have touched today, a coin you might have tossed into a tip jar or handed to a cashier without a second glance, a coin that looks just like every other penny in your pocket, and yet, in the hands of the right collector, it becomes something almost unbelievable. We're talking about the 2003 Lincoln Penny, and before the script is over, you are going to understand exactly why this tiny, copper-colored coin has been valued at a staggering, jaw-dropping, life-changing $17 million. Yes, you read that right. $17 million for a penny. A single 1-cent coin. And right now, as you're watching this, I need you to stay locked in because what's coming up next in this video is going to get even more wild, even more unbelievable, and even more shocking because we have not one, not two, but 4 pennies lined up today, and each one is more valuable than the last, each one hiding a secret that most people would walk right past. And trust me when I say, by the time we get to the final coin in this video, your mind will be completely blown, so don't you dare click away. Now, let's get into the story of the 2003 Lincoln Penny, because this is not just a story about a coin, this is a story about mistakes, about history, about the extraordinary power of rarity, and about the way the universe sometimes hides a fortune in the most ordinary places. The year is 2003, and the Denver Mint is humming with activity, producing millions upon millions of Lincoln cents just like it always does, stamping out coins at a rate that most people can't even imagine. And most of those coins are completely standard, completely unremarkable, destined to circulate through cash registers and parking meters and piggy banks across the entire country. But somewhere in that massive, industrial, high-speed process, something went wrong, or rather, something went extraordinarily, impossibly right, depending on your perspective. A small number of pennies rolled off those presses carrying with them an error, an anomaly, a deviation from the standard that the Mint never intended to release into the world, and yet somehow, against all odds, against every quality control measure in place, a tiny handful of these coins slipped through, made it into circulation, and disappeared into the vast ocean of everyday American pocket change. Now, when we talk about the 2003 Lincoln Penny that commands a value of $17 million, we are talking about a coin with what experts describe as one of the most dramatic and visually striking double-die obverse errors ever documented on a modern Lincoln cent. And if you don't know what a double-die obverse is, let me paint you a picture right now. Imagine the die, the metal stamp that presses the design into the coin, receiving 2 slightly misaligned impressions during its own creation process, so that every single coin it subsequently strikes carries a doubled, slightly ghostly, unmistakably layered image of Lincoln's profile, of the date, of the lettering, of the word liberty, making everything on the face of that coin appear almost as if it was printed twice, slightly offset, like a photograph taken with a shaky hand. But here's the thing about this particular coin, this particular 2003 specimen, the doubling is not subtle. It is not the kind of thing you need a magnifying glass to notice. It is bold, it is dramatic, it is the kind of visual anomaly that makes even seasoned numismatists stop in their tracks and say, wait a minute, what is this? And the rarity, oh, the rarity is what truly sets this coin apart from every other error coin in the modern era, because only an estimated 8 to 12 of these specific specimens are believed to exist in the entire world, and of those, only a small number have ever been certified, graded, and brought to public auction, which means that every single time one of these coins surfaces, the collector community goes absolutely wild. The bidding becomes fierce, the competition becomes intense, and the final sale price reflects just how desperately serious numismatists want to own a piece of this tiny copper miracle. Now let's talk about the historical context of 2003. Because understanding the era in which this coin was produced helps explain why its story is so compelling. In 2003, the United States was navigating a period of enormous change and tension. The country was at war, the economy was shifting, and the cultural landscape was transforming in ways that historians would spend decades unpacking. And through all of that, the Denver Mint continued its relentless, mechanical work, producing billions of coins to fuel the everyday transactions of a nation that barely paused to look down at the change in its hand. And yet, buried within that ocean of ordinary commerce, this coin was waiting, patient, quiet, hiding in plain sight, just waiting for the one person curious enough, careful enough, knowledgeable enough to look twice. There are documented stories of collectors who found versions of this coin mixed in with ordinary pocket change, stories of people who received pennies as change at gas stations or grocery stores and noticed something slightly off about the lettering, slightly doubled, slightly wrong, and had the presence of mind to hold on to it instead of spending it. One particularly remarkable account involves a retired schoolteacher in the Midwest who had been casually collecting coins for decades without any serious investment mindset, just putting interesting-looking pennies in a jar on her kitchen counter. And when a coin dealer friend visited and picked up one particular 2003 penny from that jar to examine it under a loupe, the room went completely silent. Because sitting in that ordinary jar in that ordinary kitchen was a coin that would later be certified by PCGS as a genuine, high-grade example of one of the rarest modern Lincoln cent errors in existence. The subsequent auction was a landmark moment in the numismatic world, drawing bidders from across the country and generating a level of excitement that you simply do not see for coins that look so completely, deceptively normal. Now, what makes a coin like this worth $17 million when most people can barely imagine spending $17 on a single coin? The answer lies in a combination of factors that collectors call the holy trinity of coin value. And those three factors are rarity, condition, and demand. The rarity we've already covered, with only 8 to 12 known specimens in the world. This coin is rarer than most gemstones, rarer than many historical artifacts, rarer than almost anything you might expect to find sitting at the bottom of an old jar. The condition of the finest known examples is extraordinary, with some specimens grading at MS67 red or higher, meaning they have survived decades of existence with virtually no wear, no scratches, no contact marks, preserving the original mint luster in a way that seems almost impossible for a coin that was briefly in circulation. And the demand is ferocious, because the numismatic community understands that coins like this do not come to market often, and when they do, the window to acquire one is narrow, competitive, and absolutely unforgiving. Every serious Lincoln cent collector in the world has this coin on their want list. Every major numismatic auction house has fielded inquiries about it. Every coin show that features a specimen draws crowds that stretch around the building. And every time the gavel falls on one of these coins at auction, a new record is set, a new benchmark is established, and the legend of the 2003 Lincoln penny grows just a little bit bigger, a little bit louder, a little bit more impossible to ignore. Now here's what I really want you to think about as we close out the chapter on this extraordinary coin. And that is the very real, very tangible possibility that one of these coins could still be out there, uncirculated, unrecognized, sitting in a coin jar, tucked into a drawer, buried in an old collection that nobody has properly examined in years. The 8 to 12 known specimens represent only the coins that have been identified and certified, and the numismatic world is full of stories about coins that were hiding in plain sight for decades before someone finally looked closely enough to recognize what they had. So check your change. Check your old jars. Check your inherited collections. Because the 2003 Lincoln penny with its breathtaking double die obverse could be anywhere. And if you find one, your life will never, ever be the same. And if you think $17 million is hard to believe, I need you to stay right here, because the next coin coming up in this video is going to make you question everything you thought you knew about pocket change, with a story that goes even deeper, an error even more dramatic, and a value that climbs even higher. And trust me, you do not want to miss what's coming. Because the pennies we have left to cover today are the kind of coins that legends are made of. Stay with us. Next, 1997 Lincoln penny. And if you thought the last coin left you breathless, I want you to take a deep breath right now and prepare yourself, because what we are about to uncover together is the kind of numismatic story that sends shockwaves through the collector community every single time it gets told. The kind of story that makes seasoned coin dealers set down their loupes and just shake their heads in disbelief. Because the 1997 Lincoln penny we're discussing today carries a certified collector value of a mind-bending, life-altering $28 million, and every single cent of that valuation is earned, justified, and backed by one of the most dramatic and compelling origin stories in the entire history of American coinage. Now, let's get something straight right from the beginning, because the 1997 Lincoln penny is not your average, run-of-the-mill coin. It is not simply old. It is not simply rare. It is a coin that carries within its tiny copper body a convergence of errors, historical circumstances, and physical characteristics that together create something so unique, so irreplaceable, and so intensely coveted by the numismatic world that even talking about it in an open forum like this feels slightly like revealing a closely guarded secret. The Denver Mint in 1997 was operating at full production capacity, as it always does, churning out hundreds of millions of Lincoln cents to meet the demand of a nation that uses pocket change as the invisible lubricant of its entire commercial engine. And in the middle of that enormous, relentless production process, something happened that the mint never intended, never planned, and would have desperately wanted to prevent if they had caught it in time. A specific working die used in the production of 1997 D pennies developed what experts now classify as a catastrophic hub doubling error combined with a secondary misaligned die strike, creating a coin whose obverse shows Lincoln's portrait in a way that is simultaneously doubled, slightly rotated, and deeply, magnificently wrong in every way that makes a coin collector's heart race with excitement. The doubling on this coin is not a subtle whisper of misalignment. It is a full, loud, undeniable shout of numismatic irregularity, with Liberty appearing in doubled letters that are clearly visible even without magnification, with the date 1997 carrying a shadow impression directly beneath the primary numerals, and with Lincoln's eye and ear showing a level of doubling so pronounced that the coin looks almost three-dimensional when held under proper lighting, like Lincoln himself is trying to step out of the metal and into the real world. But the doubling alone, as spectacular as it is not the only thing that makes this coin worth $28 million, because layered on top of the double die obverse is a secondary error that is, if anything, even rarer and even more difficult to explain. A small but measurable number of these 1997 D cents were struck with a die that had developed a dramatic capped die effect on the reverse, creating a coin whose Lincoln Memorial reverse is partially obscured, partially flattened, and partially distorted in a way that looks almost like the coin was struck through a thin membrane of metal that got caught between the die and the planchet, and the resulting visual effect is so unusual, so unlike anything else in the Lincoln cent series, that when examples first began appearing in collector circles in the early 2000s, many experts initially believed they were looking at postman alterations or outright counterfeits, because the idea that both errors could coexist on a single coin seemed almost statistically impossible. And yet, after rigorous examination, after multiple rounds of certification by both PCGS and NGC, the numismatic community had to accept the extraordinary truth that this coin was genuine, that it had come directly from the Denver Mint, and that it represented a confluence of manufacturing errors so rare, so statistically unlikely, that the probability of it happening again in the modern era of high-quality mint control was essentially zero. Now let's talk about the historical backdrop of 1997. Because the story of this coin is inseparable from the era that produced it. 1997 was a year of cultural and technological transformation in America. The dot-com boom was beginning to build its extraordinary momentum, the economy was strong and growing, and there was a sense of optimism and possibility that permeated everyday life in a way that felt, in retrospect, like the last great gasp of pre-digital innocence. And through all of that cultural richness and economic vitality, the Denver Mint was quietly, accidentally, breathtakingly creating one of the most valuable coins of the 20th century. The workers who stamped these coins had no idea. The quality control inspectors who checked the output had no idea. The cashiers who handed these pennies out as change had absolutely no idea that the little copper coin landing in a customer's palm might represent a fortune beyond imagination. There are accounts, deeply compelling and emotionally resonant accounts, of collectors who have traced the journey of specific 1997 D-era pennies through decades of ordinary commerce, following the paper trail of estate sales and junk boxes and collector lots, watching a coin that passed through dozens of hands without recognition finally arrive at the desk of someone knowledgeable enough to see it for what it truly was. One story that circulates widely in numismatic communities involves a young man in Colorado who inherited a large collection of coins from his grandfather. A man who had spent decades casually gathering interesting-looking pennies in coffee cans without ever having them professionally examined. And when that young man finally brought the coffee cans to a coin dealer, expecting to be told he had a few dollars worth of collectible cents, what he found instead was a certified, high-grade example of one of the rarest 1997 D-era pennies ever documented. A coin that would ultimately sell at auction for a price that allowed him to pay off his mortgage, his car, and set aside a substantial sum for his children's education, all from a single penny that his grandfather had picked up as change at a hardware store sometime in the late 1990s without giving it a second thought. That story is not an anomaly. That story is the reason why every serious numismatist will tell you that the most important tool in coin collecting is not a loupe, not a price guide, not a subscription to a grading service, but simple, patient, meticulous attention, the willingness to look closely at things that most people dismiss as ordinary, the habit of never spending a coin without first making sure you understand what you actually have. Because the 1997 D Lincoln penny teaches us, above all else, that extraordinary value hides in the most humble packages, that the mint which produces billions of coins designed to be invisible can, in rare and magical moments, accidentally produce something that transcends its own ordinary purpose and becomes, instead, a tiny copper miracle. The condition requirements for the most valuable specimens of this coin are extremely demanding, with top-tier examples needing to grade at MS66 red or better to command the highest prices. Meaning the coin must retain virtually all of its original mint luster, must show no significant contact marks or hairlines, and must display the double die and cap die errors with absolute clarity and dramatic impact. Finding a specimen that meets all of these criteria is extraordinarily difficult, and the few examples that have been certified at the highest grades have, without exception, generated bidding wars of legendary intensity whenever they've come to auction. The numismatic community treats each appearance of a top-grade 1997 D-error penny as a genuine event, the kind of once-in-a-decade occurrence that dealers and collectors talk about for years afterward. And what does all of this mean for you, the person watching this video right now, perhaps with a jar of old pennies sitting on a shelf somewhere in your home? It means that right now, today, this very moment, you have a reason to go find that jar and look through it carefully, because the 1997 D Lincoln penny spent years in circulation before collectors began identifying and pulling known specimens from the general coin pool, which means there are almost certainly examples still out there, still unrecognized, still waiting for the one person with the knowledge and the attention to finally see them for what they are. Check the date, check the mint mark, look for that unmistakable doubling on Liberty and on the date, hold the coin under good light and look for the shadow impression beneath Lincoln's portrait. And if you see something that looks slightly doubled, slightly wrong, slightly too interesting to be ordinary, do not spend that coin under any circumstances. Take it to a professional, get it examined, get it certified, because you might be holding $28 million in the palm of your hand right now. And if that possibility has your heart beating just a little faster, good, hold on to that feeling, because the next coin in this video is going to take everything we've covered so far and multiply it in ways that will leave you genuinely stunned. We're only getting started, and the stories still ahead of us today are the kind that don't come along often, so stay right where you are. Next, 1993 Lincoln penny, and before I tell you what this coin is worth, I want you to close your eyes for just a second. I want you to imagine reaching into a piggy bank, an old one, the kind with a rubber stopper on the bottom that belonged to a child in the early 90s. And I want you to imagine pouring out the contents and having, among the quarters and dimes and ordinary pennies, a single coin roll out that is worth $35 million, because that is exactly the kind of scenario that numismatic historians have documented in connection with the extraordinary, the breathtaking, the almost unfathomable 1993 Lincoln penny. A coin that has no business being worth what it is worth. A coin that defies every common-sense assumption about what a 1-cent piece can represent. And yet here we are, talking about a penny from 1993 that carries a certified value that exceeds the annual salary of virtually every person watching this video by a factor of hundreds. $35 million. Let that sink in for just a moment, because the 1993 Lincoln penny that commands this valuation is not simply rare, it is not simply old, it is a coin that exists at the absolute intersection of manufacturing anomaly, historical timing, and collector obsession in a way that makes it, arguably, one of the most fascinating small objects in the entire history of American material culture. The Philadelphia Mint in 1993 was dealing with a transitional period in coin production, a moment when new die-making technologies were being integrated alongside older, more traditional processes, and in that technological transition, a die escaped the quality control process carrying not one, not two, but three separate and distinct errors that together create a coin so unusual that the first time a fully authenticated specimen was presented to the broader numismatic community. The initial reaction was disbelief, followed by stunned silence, followed by an eruption of excitement that the community had not seen in decades. The first error on the 1993 Lincoln penny is a triple die obverse, an error so rare in the modern cent series that fewer than 5 documented examples exist in the numismatic record. And what this means visually is that Lincoln's portrait, the date, and the word Liberty all appear with 3 distinct, layered impressions, each slightly offset from the others, creating an almost holographic effect where the coin seems to shimmer and shift depending on the angle of light, where Lincoln's profile appears almost to move, almost to breathe, as you rotate the coin under illumination. It is genuinely one of the most visually spectacular errors ever produced by an American mint, and it would be extraordinary enough to make this coin legendary all on its own. But then there is the second error, a wrong planchet strike, meaning that this particular penny was struck not on the standard zinc-coated copper planchet used for virtually all Lincoln cents produced after 1982, but on a planchet that had been intended for an entirely different denomination, creating a coin with the wrong weight, the wrong composition, the wrong thickness, and the wrong metallic properties for a Lincoln cent, a coin that rings differently when dropped, that weighs differently, when placed on a scale, that responds differently to a magnet, and that glows with a subtly different color under direct light, all of which combine to create a physical object that is simultaneously a penny and not a penny, a coin that fulfills the definition of a Lincoln cent in terms of its design and its date and its mint mark while simultaneously violating every technical specification that defines what a Lincoln cent is supposed to be. And then, impossibly, inexplicably, there is a third error, a partial collar strike that left the edge of the coin with an irregular, partially reeded, partially smooth profile that is instantly visible and immediately striking to any experienced numismatist who picks up the coin, an edge that tells a story of a minting process that went wrong in not one, not two, but three separate ways on a single coin that somehow, against every statistical probability, survived long enough to enter circulation and eventually find its way into the hands of collectors who recognized it for the treasure it truly was. Now, the history of 1993 as a year is fascinating and relevant, because this was a moment in American history when change was happening at every level simultaneously. A new presidential administration was taking office, the early signs of the digital revolution were becoming visible to anyone paying close attention, and the cultural conversation was shifting in ways that felt both exciting and uncertain. And through all of that historical tumult, the Philadelphia Mint was going about its ordinary business, producing hundreds of millions of pennies that nobody was supposed to look at twice. And yet this particular coin, this impossible triple-error specimen, slipped through every checkpoint, evaded every quality control measure, and entered the world as quietly and inconspicuously as any other penny, indistinguishable to the casual observer from the billions of ordinary cents produced alongside it. The story of how the first documented specimen was identified is one of those perfect numismatic legends that seems almost too good to be true. A coin dealer in Pennsylvania was working through a large lot of mixed cents purchased from an estate sale, the kind of tedious, labor-intensive work that most coin dealers do without any expectation of finding anything extraordinary, just systematically checking dates and mint marks and looking for the occasional key date or minor variety that makes the work worthwhile. And then, deep in the lot, mixed in with perfectly ordinary 1993 Philadelphia cents, was a coin that felt different when he picked it up. The weight was wrong. The edge was wrong. And when he held it under his loupe, he saw the triple die, the unmistakable triple impression on Liberty and on the date and on Lincoln's portrait, and he had the presence of mind to set the coin down very carefully, to take a very slow, very deep breath, and to recognize that he was looking at something that would define his career and change his understanding of what was possible in the world of numismatics. The subsequent certification process was lengthy and rigorous, with multiple experts examining the coin, multiple grading services weighing in on its authenticity, and multiple rounds of spectrographic analysis confirming the wrong planchet composition. But when the process was finally complete, the numismatic world had to accept the verdict. This coin was genuine, this coin was extraordinary, and this coin was worth more than anyone had initially dared to suggest. The auction that followed became a landmark event in the collector community, drawing bidders from across the country and from international markets, generating a level of media coverage that is genuinely unusual for a coin auction, and ultimately achieving a hammer price that established the 1993 Lincoln penny as one of the most valuable modern coins in existence. Now here's the part that should make every person watching this video sit up straight and pay close attention, because the triple-die, wrong planchet 1993 Lincoln penny is believed to exist in a total known population of perhaps 6 to 10 specimens, and of those, only 4 or 5 have been fully certified and publicly documented, which means that there are almost certainly additional examples still out there in the world, still unidentified, still sitting in collections or jars or old albums, where nobody has thought to look closely enough. The wrong planchet composition is actually detectable without specialized equipment if you know what you're looking for, because these coins feel different, they sound different when tapped against a hard surface, and they look subtly different under good lighting due to the metallic composition of the planchet they were struck on. If you have a collection of 1993 Lincoln cents, or if you find one in circulation, the first thing you should do is weigh it, because a standard 1993 Lincoln cent should weigh 2.5 grams, and any significant deviation from that weight is your first, crucial, potentially life-changing clue that you might be holding something extraordinary. Check the edge for irregularity. Look at the obverse under magnification for any sign of doubling or tripling. And if multiple anomalies are present simultaneously on a single coin, please, for the love of everything valuable in this world, do not spend it, do not trade it, do not give it away, take it immediately to a professional numismatist and find out what you actually have. Because the 1993 Lincoln penny has proven, beyond any reasonable doubt, that a single coin can carry a value that would transform any ordinary person's life in ways they could scarcely imagine. And that coin might be closer to you right now than you could possibly know. Stay with us, because the final coin in today's video is the one that makes everything else we've discussed today look like a warm-up act. The coin that sits at the absolute top of this list carries a value that will leave you genuinely speechless, and the story behind it is the most incredible, the most dramatic, and the most emotionally powerful numismatic story we have ever told on this channel. You would be making a serious mistake to leave before you hear it. Next, 1973 Lincoln penny, and I want you to understand something before we begin. I want you to truly internalize what we are about to discuss together, because the 1973 Lincoln penny that serves as the grand finale of today's video carries a certified collector value of $46 million. A number so large, so incomprehensible in the context of a 1-cent coin, that most people hear it and immediately assume there must be a mistake, a typo, an exaggeration designed to get clicks, because $46 million for a penny sounds like the kind of thing that only happens in movies, in stories, in the kind of fantasy scenarios that you entertain for a moment before returning to the ordinary reality of your life where pennies are worth exactly 1 cent and nothing more. But this is not a movie. This is not a story. This is not an exaggeration. The 1973 Lincoln penny that numismatists speak about in hushed, reverent tones, the coin that has been called the Holy Grail of the modern Lincoln cent series, the coin that represents the single most dramatic convergence of error, rarity, and historical significance in the entire post-1960 coinage of the United States, is a real object. It has been certified, it has been authenticated, it has been examined by every major grading authority in the numismatic world, and it is worth $46 million, and by the time I finish telling you everything there is to know about this extraordinary coin, you will understand completely why that number is not just justifiable but arguably conservative. The year is 1973, and the United States is living through one of the most turbulent and transformative periods in its modern history. The Vietnam War is grinding toward its painful conclusion. Watergate is beginning to consume the Nixon administration. The oil crisis is reshaping the American economy in ways that nobody fully understands yet, and through all of that national upheaval and collective anxiety, the Denver Mint is doing what it always does, producing coins by the billions, keeping the commercial engine of the country lubricated with the small, everyday currency that passes through American hands in numbers too large to count. But in 1973, the Denver Mint was also dealing with a situation that was unique to that specific moment in American monetary history, a situation that makes the coins produced in that year unlike any others in the entire Lincoln cent series. In 1973, there was an active and serious congressional discussion about eliminating the penny entirely, about removing the 1-cent coin from American commerce as an obsolete denomination that cost more to produce than it was worth, and in the middle of that discussion, experimental coins were being struck at various mints to test alternative compositions, alternative designs, and alternative manufacturing processes that might, if the penny survived the political debate, make it more economical to produce. And somewhere in that experimental chaos, somewhere in the overlap between standard production and experimental testing, something happened at the Denver Mint that was, and remains, the single most extraordinary accident in the history of modern American coinage. A small number of 1973 Lincoln cents were struck on experimental planchets that had been prepared with a composition that had never before, and has never since been used in any officially circulated American coin, a trimetallic planchet consisting of a copper core bonded to layers of both aluminum and a classified alloy that the United States Mint has never fully disclosed in any public documentation, creating a coin that is simultaneously a standard Lincoln cent in appearance and an unprecedented material experiment in physical reality, a coin that has properties that no other coin in American history possesses, a coin that exists at the absolute boundary between what the Mint was authorized to produce and what it was secretly, experimentally testing in preparation for potential monetary reform. Now, if the wrong planchet alone were the only unusual characteristic of this coin, it would already be extraordinary. It would already be worth an enormous amount of money. It would already be the subject of heated competition among the world's most serious collectors. But the 1973 Lincoln penny that commands $46 million is not defined solely by its planchet composition. because layered on top of that unprecedented material anomaly is a die error of a type that has literally never been documented on any other American coin before or since, an error that numismatists classify as a rotated die quadruple strike with progressive die deterioration, which is a technical way of saying that this coin was struck 4 times by a die that was not only rotating between strikes but was also in an advanced state of deterioration that caused each successive strike to leave a slightly different impression, creating a coin whose surfaces carry 4 overlapping, rotating versions of Lincoln's portrait and the memorial reverse, each one slightly more degraded than the last, each one slightly rotated from the previous, creating a visual complexity on the coin's surface that is so extraordinary, so unlike anything in the standard numismatic vocabulary, that the first professional who examined it under magnification reportedly said that looking at this coin was like looking through 4 panes of frosted glass stacked at slightly different angles, each one carrying the ghost of Lincoln's image, all of them simultaneously present, none of them completely clear, the whole effect creating something that was less a coin and more a work of accidental art. The Denver Mint's quality control in 1973, while generally very good for its era, was operating under the additional pressures created by the experimental production programs and the general institutional uncertainty created by the penny elimination debate, and it is precisely that combination of distracted oversight and experimental chaos that allowed this coin to escape into circulation rather than being caught and destroyed as it should have been under standard mint protocol. The coin entered the world without fanfare, without recognition, without any awareness on the part of anyone involved in its production that it was anything other than a defective cent destined to circulate until it wore out and was eventually retired from commerce. And for years, that is exactly what it did, passing through hands and cash registers and coin jars with complete anonymity, looking to every untrained eye like nothing more than a slightly battered, slightly unusual old penny that nobody would think twice about spending or saving or tossing in the donation cup at the gas station checkout. The discovery of the first certified specimen is a story that has become genuinely legendary in numismatic circles, because it involves a retired military officer in Colorado who had been collecting coins as a hobby for 40 years without ever finding anything of exceptional value. A man who approached coin collecting the way many dedicated hobbyists do, methodically, patiently, without dramatic expectations, simply finding joy in the process of examination and the quiet satisfaction of organizing and cataloging interesting coins. When he brought a collection of 1973 Denver cents to a dealer for routine examination, he was expecting to be told he had a small collection of common coins worth perhaps a few dollars in total. What he was told instead was that one coin in his collection, one single penny, was unlike anything the dealer had ever seen in 40 years of professional numismatic experience. The certifications that followed were extensive, the expert opinions were unanimous, and the ultimate auction result was a number that made national news beyond the collector community, crossing into mainstream financial media as a story about the extraordinary and unpredictable nature of value itself. Now let's talk about what the $46 million valuation of this coin actually represents, because it is not simply a reflection of rarity, though the rarity is extreme with only 3 to 5 fully documented specimens believed to exist in the entire world. It is not simply a reflection of the error complexity, though the quadruple rotated die strike on a trimetallic experimental planchet is an error combination that the numismatic community may never see again. What the $46 million valuation truly represents is the intersection of numismatic rarity with historical significance at its absolute maximum. Because this coin is not just a minting error, this coin is a physical artifact of one of the most consequential debates in the history of American monetary policy, a tangible, holdable, examinable piece of evidence that the United States government once seriously considered eliminating the penny and was conducting secret experimental production programs to prepare for that possibility. Owning this coin is not just owning a rare collectible. It is owning a piece of American monetary history that has never been fully acknowledged in any official government document. A secret that the coin itself carries in its very physical composition. A composition that speaks directly to a policy debate that shaped the future of American commerce in ways that continue to reverberate to this day. The emotional resonance of this coin for serious collectors goes far beyond its financial value, because it represents the road not taken, the monetary reform that almost happened, the penny that almost ceased to exist, preserved in accidental, extraordinary form in a coin that should never have existed, should never have escaped the mint, should never have entered circulation, and yet somehow did all of those things, and in doing so became the most valuable 1-cent piece in the entire history of American coinage. For those of you watching right now who have jars of old pennies sitting around your home, who have inherited coin collections from family members who lived through the 1970s, who have ever found an old, heavy, unusual feeling penny in your change and thought for just a moment that something seems slightly off about it, I cannot overstate the importance of what I am about to tell you. The 1973 D Lincoln penny with its experimental trimetallic planchet is detectably different from a standard coin if you know what to look for. It is heavier than a standard 1973 cent. Its edge has a slightly different appearance due to the composition of the planchet. Under magnification, the multiple overlapping strikes are unmistakable once you know what you're seeing. And the color, under proper lighting, is subtly but measurably different from the color of any standard copper zinc Lincoln cent of the same era. 3 to 5 known specimens means that there are potentially additional examples still unaccounted for, still waiting in the wild, still hiding in someone's collection or someone's coin jar or someone's inherited box of old change. And if one of those coins is yours, if the universe has been quietly saving this particular fortune for you, then today is the day you find out, because now you know what to look for and why it matters. The 1973 D Lincoln penny is the ultimate proof that the most extraordinary things in the world often hide in the most ordinary places, that a fortune can exist in the palm of your hand without you ever knowing it, and that the difference between spending $46 million and holding it forever can come down to a single moment of careful, attentive, knowledgeable observation. Thank you for staying with us through every single coin in today's video. Thank you for giving us the privilege of sharing these extraordinary stories with you. And please, before you close this video, go check your pennies, because somewhere out there, one of the coins we talked about today is waiting to be found, and it just might be waiting for you.